I can't hear you. Can you see me? I can't
Can
hear
you
you.
hear me?
Now I can. Now I can. Sorry, I missed what you said earlier.
I said, how have you been since we met?
Great, great. I don't know what you've told them, but I got to visit. I had a great visit in Cyprus in December, which is where we met. I was on a tour talking to various groups on both sides of the island, talking about journalism, fact checking, and misinformation, how to be a better uh, user of social media. I had a great time, and I am glad to be addressing your class today.
Before giving the floor to you, I would like to thank you actually for accepting our invitation to be here with us today. You are in America, we are in Cyprus, and there is a 7 hours distance, I think.
Yep.
Thank you so much again. And before, as I said, giving the floor to you, I would like to read your short biography to my student to give some information about you. What are you doing right now and about your background? Louis Jacobson has been with Politifact since 2009, currently as senior correspondent. Previously, he served as deputy editor of Roll Call and as founding editor of its legislative wire service, Congress Now. Earlier, he spent more time than a decade covering politics, policy, Congress, and lobbying for National Journal magazine. He is senior author of the 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024 editions of the Almanac of American Politics. He also contributed to the 2000 and 2004 editions of the Almanac. Since 2004, Jacobson has been writing a column on politics in the States, which has run in Roll Call, Statesline.org, Governing, and the Cook Political Report. He now divides the column between Sabata's Crystal Ball at the University of Virginia Center for Politics and United States News and World Report. Earlier in his career, he wrote on science for The Economist, The Wall Street Journal, The Washington Post, and Science Magazine. He received the Weidenbaum Center Award for Evidence-Based Journalism from Washington University in St. Louis in 2014 and in 2016 and 2020. The Society of American Business Editors and Writers gave him a Best in Business award for his economics coverage. Jacobson has been teaching at West Virginia University's Reds College of Media Science since August 2018, showing the students how to produce fact checks for Politifact, West Virginia. He has also been serving as a visiting scholar at St. Bonaventure University's Gendoli School of Communication since April 2020, teaching students how to produce fact checks for Politifact, New York. And thank you for this inspiring biography. And now I give the floor to you.
Well, thank you so much. That definitely covers it all. So let me start by telling you a little bit about my job at Politifact, which is my full-time job. I'm going to share my screen. Just take a second here. Politifact is a website. Do you see my screen? Is it okay?
Yes, we can see.
Great. We were founded in 2007. I've been there since 2009. And it's a website that does fact checking. Initially, we began by doing fact checks of politicians, and we still do that to this day. And that's actually my focus there, fact checking politicians. And we use our journalism skills to write articles about claims that politicians or other commentators in politics make. and use our research skills, reporting skills, to put together our best assessment of how accurate that statement is, and then write that article up. And then a panel of 3 editors on staff works with the reporter to determine what the truth rating should be on our so-called truthometer. And I'm going to just go through the 6-point rating scale for that truthometer. Each article each claim that we're judging will have both a fully reported article text, but also will have a rating on it, one of the following 6 ratings. The best rating is true, which means the statement is accurate and there's nothing significant missing. The next one is mostly true. The statement is accurate, but it needs clarification or additional information. Then we have half true. The statement is partially accurate, but leaves out important details or takes things out of context. Mostly false. The statement contains some element of truth, but it ignores critical facts that would give a different impression. Then we have false. The statement is not accurate. And finally, pants on fire. I don't know if this is a term that non-English speakers are familiar with, but there's an old schoolyard taunt that goes liar, liar, pants on fire. So that's where the term pants on fire came from, and that's our worst rating. The statement is not accurate and makes a ridiculous claim. The difference between false and pants on fire for us is basically something is false if it's just wrong, and there's nothing kind of remarkable about it. It's just wrong. But for something to be rated pants on fire for us, there's an element of recklessness to it. That the person saying this should have used some critical thinking and just not said it because it's so obviously wrong, and they said it anyway. So that's sort of what pants on fire comes from. I'm going to switch to a different screen for just a second here. So there are a couple organizations like ours in the United States that do this. One is at the Washington Post, a big newspaper in Washington, D.C. One is at the University of Pennsylvania called factcheck.org. A couple other news outlets like the Associated Press and USA Today have a fact-checking outlet as part of them. But we're the biggest. We basically produce the most content in any given week, and we also produce the most content, particularly on fact-checking politicians. So, for instance, President Biden is going to have the State of the Union address this coming week, which is the speech every year he gives to Congress about the state of the nation. And we're going to have about 7 or 8 people on staff on duty that night doing fact checks as quickly as we can. We can use social media to share our fact checks of previous fact checks that we've done of things that he said in the past that he's saying again in the speech, and so that's almost in real time. And then we produce, within an hour after the speech is over, a full rundown of everything he's said, and do a fact check of things that he has said in the speech. And we've had we have a 2024 presidential election this year, so we're very busy covering that. It basically looks like it's going to be Trump versus Biden again. So we're tracking Donald Trump's criminal trials. We're tracking debates that take place between the candidates. That'll be later on in the year, and the political conventions that get widely covered. So it'll be a very busy year for us. We have about 24 people, and aside from the political stuff that we do, we also fact check social media. So starting in 2016, after the 2016 presidential election, when people really began to understand that social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter were becoming a place for people to share false information with each other. Facebook approached us and a number of other fact-checking organizations to do a partnership, and we've been doing it ever since then. We also have one now with TikTok. So my colleagues mainly work on this. I'm more on the political fact-checking side, covering politicians, but actually probably about 2/3 of our staff, including a lot of freelancers who don't even count in that 24 number I mentioned. They do fact-checking of statements on Facebook and on TikTok. And the way the Facebook program works is that Facebook sort of produced a dashboard for us that surfaces questionable content that's either been detected by the algorithm or has been reported by actual users. And they share all of those posts to us, and we can choose which ones to do our reporting on. We would then publish an article on Politifact as we would fact check anything else. As soon as that is public on our site, we then go back into the Facebook dashboard, and three things happen after we click a little check mark. One is that the claim in question, it gets downgraded in the algorithm, so you're less likely to see it if you're a Facebook user. Two, if you do get it in your feed, it'll have a little screen over it before you get to it saying this claim has been fact checked in Politifact. Do you want to see the fact check? If so, click here. So it's like a little speed bump in the road. You can still go see the post without having to click on the Facebook, on the Politifact check. But it is a little way of just sort of, slowing down the speed of stuff that is incorrect going viral. And the third thing that happens is that if you're a business that uses Facebook, you can't earn money from advertisements off of that post if it's been fact checked by us. The TikTok program is a little newer. It's maybe 3 or 4 years old, and it's a little bit different in structure, but it's the same general principle that stuff that we fact check and find incorrect gets downgraded or taken down entirely. And so, I would say probably 2/3 of our fact checks these days, probably up to 10 even 12 fact checks a day, are on the misinformation side, the Facebook, TikTok side, and the rest of them are, politicians. We obviously fact check Joe Biden a lot, Donald Trump a lot, other major people in Congress, people in the media like, say, Tucker Carlson. So we are pretty busy, and since I've been there in 2009, the centrality, the sort of importance of truth in politics has become only more important and more central to the debate of what's going on in politics. So we serve, I think, an important role in that way. I'm going to do a little. Wait. First of all, are there any questions anybody want to ask first before I get into a little presentation? No? Okay. I'll go back to sharing them. One sec.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Sorry, there is a technical issue. So I would like to ask you a question actually about the fact-checking strategies that you are following while you are deciding about, for example, Pans on Fire is the very the things that they are really they don't have any the information which has no clue about whether it is the fact or not.
Right.
But the for example, the ones that you are mostly assured that it is the true information. So how do you understand? There should be some, for example, papers which prove that it is true or something, but I would like to ask you the other strategies that you are using.
Sure.
Can you please briefly discuss this strategies for
Sure.
fact checking?
So, all of us are journalists with experience uh, covering politics and other issues. So, fundamentally, we are a journalistic organization. The sorts of tools that we use are talking to people, reporting. So, for a typical article, I will reach out, usually email in my case, although people sometimes do it by phone. Um, Connecting with experts, usually 3 or 4 experts, and we try to have an ideological diversity so that we're not only hearing one side. So we reach out to experts, but a lot of what we do is using publicly available information. A lot of the claims that I do, particularly I specialize in like economic claims, and I've become pretty experienced at using the databases of official economic data in the U.S. and the rest of the world. So I can create charts showing how the patterns are for various statistics economically, and use that to put the claim to the test to see whether it's accurate or not. We also use Google a lot if we're fact checking whether something whether someone said something, or if they said something a little bit different than the speaker says they said. We can go back to the original video footage, to the original news article, and compare what somebody is accused of saying to what they actually said. So our skills are really sort of basic journalism skills. It's just put together in a way that instead of covering news kind of in a general sense, it's a very specific kind of reporting that focuses on trying to validate specific claims that somebody says in politics. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. And I have another question actually
Sure.
before
Yeah.
you moving on. So, what about the attitude? For example, if you publish something about Joe Biden or Trump or any other political figures, let's say,
Yeah.
for example, if you publish something pants on fire,
Mm-hmm.
what about the attitude towards the Politifacts or the correspondents working in the Politifacts?
So,
Or how
so
how
yeah,
you handle with it?
right. We are definitely a target because even more than other media outlets, we're sort of making a decision or a statement with our ratings. And it's understandable that a politician who is getting a pants on fire might not be too happy with us. One of our core duties that we always do before a story is published is we do reach out to the speaker, excuse me, to make sure they have a chance to basically make their case. And if they engage with us, often in my experience, their engagement with us has improved their score. Even if it's not accurate, at least they can explain what their thinking was, and sort of and how they got to this belief that that uh, they're articulating, and that can give us some guidance on giving their perspective in the article and perhaps raising the accuracy level of the rating. Um, we try to reach out a couple times, email, phone, to make sure that we give them a fair chance to be part of the story. A lot of times people do not engage with us, particularly the more types of people who don't really care about being accurate and just want to spread falsehoods. They don't have a real incentive in their minds to really engage with us, and it doesn't matter to them so much that if we call them false or pants on fire. We do get we are a target on social media. We have a lot of critics. Many in the conservative side feel that we're too liberal, and there's a sort of pattern of ongoing criticism of us for being too liberal. But actually, it's interesting that when we go against liberal politicians or other interest groups on that side of the spectrum, those are some of the most intense criticism of us. Liberals tend to get even more angry than conservatives do, just less frequently. So we definitely get it from both sides. We feel like, if both sides are criticizing us, then we are kind of doing a fair job. So we just have to, in terms of engaging with our critics, if they have a legitimate complaint with our work, we will definitely engage. If we feel that they're honestly questioning what we're doing, they deserve to have some interaction with us. But there are some people who are just sort of lashing out, and there's only a certain number of hours in the day, and we can't engage with everybody. So we really try to sort of limit our engagement to those who have a real thoughtful approach and critique of our work, and we will reach out to them, but not to people who are just sort of lashing out knee jerk against us.
Yes. Bir dakika. 1 second. Vereyim bunu.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
All right. Can you give us an example, something that you most probably have lived through, of the most outrageous claim that a politician has ever given, in your
Okay.
opinion? And
Okay.
maybe one other example in which something that they said was very true, and something that you didn't know and that was groundbreaking. Thank you.
Okay. Let me quickly call up, and I'll share it on my screen. This one has always stood out to me as kind of the craziest claim I've ever checked. And there are certainly crazy claims that, like, my colleagues have fact checked. Sorry, I'm just getting to the right place here. Okay, I'm going to present, share screen. Here we go. Okay, so I'm sharing a story from 2015. There are all kinds of crazy claims that the misinformation people have fact checked. About various conspiracy theories, like the moon landing is faked, and and the Earth is flat and stuff like that. But in terms of a politician, this guy who was an eminent surgeon, scientist, named Ben Carson. In 2015, he ran for president as a Republican in the same primary that Donald Trump first ran in. And he said, in the class of 1968 at Patrice Lumumba University in Moscow, Mahmoud Abbas was one of the members of that class, and so was Ali Khamenei. And that's where they first established relationships with the young Vladimir Putin. We could not find any evidence, if I recall, this is now 8 years ago, or 9 years ago, but couldn't find any evidence for like any of those. And we were able to look at the career history, and I think Abbas had spent some time in Moscow, but hadn't overlapped with the other two. I think Khamenei had like never really left the country or something. And so it was just kind of a crazy, like out of nowhere claim, and it got a pants on fire. So that to me stands out. And he said this while he was running for president, and so it got some prominence, the comment. But that was sort of a crazy one. As far as a true statement, I don't know if any particular one stands out. I'm going to go back to not sharing my screen now. 1 second. I don't know if any particular one stands out. I will say two things. One is that our standard for choosing facts to check, we don't zero in only on stuff that we know is wrong going in. We like to find claims to check that, we'll see or hear something and say, huh, I wonder if that's true. And, really have an open mind going in about what it is, whether it's true or false. Unlike some of our competitors who there's like at least one competitor who, if they start working on a claim, it turns out to be true, they'll stop working on it and not publish anything. But for us, the numbers have kind of changed because we're doing so much more misinformation, Facebook, TikTok stuff, which tends to be much more negative. But before we started that, our sort of typical breakdown for our rulings was about 18% true, 18% mostly true, 18% half true, 18% mostly false, 18% false, and something like 10%, whatever's left, are pants on fire. So actually, pants on fire was relatively rare back when we were doing mostly politicians. So that means true or mostly true. And I would say mostly true for me is a very good rating. Our definition, as I said before, is that the statement is accurate, but it just needs additional information. And getting a mostly true is no sort of mark of shame on the speaker. Virtually any statement in a tweet or a speech or a TV interview is never going to have absolutely every bit of context and nuance. But if it's basically accurate and we're just adding a little bit of extra context to it, that is pretty much what a mostly true is. And so if you're looking at true and mostly true, if they're at 36% of our ratings, kind of, of politicians, that's not bad to have basically, accurate more than 1/3 of the time. So I'm somewhat, pleased that we can get that many mostly true ratings in there. So I don't know if that helps, but we, frequently have a sprinkling of mostly trues and trues in what we write.
I have one more question, actually.
Sure.
Yeah. What about self-censorship? Or I know that it is sometimes it can be difficult to confess that yes, I use self-censorship while deciding whether to do that news or not, whether to search about that information or not. But I really wonder if you find yourself or your team, let's say, in Politifact, while you are imposing self-censorship to yourself, or how you handle with it, actually, or even if you find yourself that you are thinking not to, search about that information, whether it is false or not.
Yeah. Fortunately, we in the U.S. for now, we have a good deal of press freedom, so we haven't felt affected by what people who were fact checking think of us and whether they try to stop us from publishing it. Now, we'll definitely have a discussion if they raise issues, and we will put those in the article. We're not going to cut out somebody's explanation or personal views from the article, we will reflect that as part of our final article. But fortunately, we have not been in a situation where somebody's tried to pressure us into not running it. Very, very occasionally do we get like a threat of a lawsuit. I can't even remember the last time that it's gone very far. Fortunately, either political or legal, pressures have not been a problem for us. Now, could it be in the future? It's possible. If the laws change or if the political mood changes, certainly it could happen. But we've been very fortunate that we can really make the decisions that we want to make based on journalistic principles, and we haven't had to use self-censorship. Now, it doesn't mean that we run absolutely everything that crosses our mind. Obviously, we have a hierarchy of factors that would go into whether we fact check a particular claim or like publish a particular fact check, including news value, how important it is for our readers to know this information, how prominent the speaker is. If the president is saying it, it's more important than some very low-level local official. How much attention it's getting. If something has gotten a lot of attention on social media or in the regular media, it'll have more impact. Then we're more likely to run that sort of article. We also, because we have a limited staff, even though we've grown significantly in the past decade in terms of staff, we still have a pretty small staff compared to a lot of news outlets, and so we can't afford to spend 2 or 3 or 4 days on one single story. We tend to turn around the story per journalist. 1 to 2 stories. One story every day or two, depending on how fast the editing process goes. So we do step back and fact check things and decide not to fact check things that are just going to take too long, or we don't feel we have the expertise to sort of weigh in on. And the other factor I should mention too is that there are 2 specific kind of claims that we do not fact check because we can't. One is opinions. We can't fact check an opinion. Different people can differ on how they feel about a certain subject, and there's no right or wrong answer. We also can't fact check predictions. We can't say what is going to happen in the future. We literally can't. So we stay away from predictions. We stay away from opinions. But a lot of other stuff is fair game for us.
Anybody has any question, or we can leave him to carry on his presentation? Yes. 1 second.
The last point that Mr. Lewis has mentioned. So you're saying that opinions and predictions cannot be fact checked. Both of those claims are based on some form of basic knowledge or some basis of information that was either given to that individual or that was seen or viewed by someone who the person that makes or claims an opinion of has seen in the past around relatives or any other sort of social groups. If those predictions and opinions cross a line between being somewhat true or false, how can I phrase this? How can you claim yourself that it is an opinion or a prediction? What is this link between them, and how do you distinguish it?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I've explained it well enough. But
So one thing I didn't mention, and I can, now is that I was referring to our fact checks, which get that 6-point rating scale. We also do articles that are not rated, and these are explanatory articles, and so we can take up opinions or predictions within the context of a non-rated article. We just don't want to go on the record saying that something is going to happen or that somebody is right in their personal opinion. But for instance, excuse me, if somebody is saying that the U.S. is, excuse me, if somebody's saying that the U.S. is going to go into a recession in the next 6 months, we can't fact check that. We can't say true, false. What we can do is we can do an article talking to experts and looking at the data and saying, well, experts are doubtful that the U.S. is going to go into recession in the next 6 months, or the data that we have right now suggests that it's unlikely. We just can't say can't take a stand to say that we definitely know that it's not going to, but we can have a discussion to explain what's at stake and what is known. And we frequently do that. I would say actually maybe 40% of the articles that I write are actually not rated. And we can do the same thing with opinions. We can look at somebody's opinion on whether taxes are too high. No one can say with certainty whether they're too high, because that's an opinion, and reasonable people can disagree. But we can look at how the U.S. tax system works, what types of taxes are levied on people in different categories of income. We can compare the U.S. to other countries. So we can write an explanatory article about the sort of underlying issues that go into the opinion without passing judgment ourselves with a formal rating. Does that help?
Kalsın sende. Leave it with you, and if somebody has any question, you can pass it. Yeah. Yes. If somebody, do you have any question, or you can carry on? Yes, you can carry on your presentation.
Okay, great. And how much time do I have left? About 15 minutes?
Actually, it depends on you. If you can carry on. Like, we don't have any time limit,
you don't?
so
Okay,
we can
fine.
speak until the morning. Let's say. Anyway, I'm joking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me. I'll call out my presentation, and so this is one of the presentations that I gave frequently during my trip to Cyprus last December. And it's basically a guide to better use of social media, trying to sort of geared at citizens rather than journalists, and trying to be a better citizen when using social media and not get taken in by things that are false. So,
Can I? Oh,
yes.
because it was on the first page. I thought that it's frozen, but I think you haven't changed any page yet, right?
Here, I just went to a second page. You see that change?
Okay. Yes, I
Yes?
can see. Yeah.
Okay, great. So basically, this is a presentation that I sort of put together with my colleagues at the organization that I work for. So basically, Politifact is part of the Poynter Institute, which is a journalism institute based in Florida. And one of our other sort of corporate cousins as part of Poynter is called MediaWise. And whereas Politifact is fact-checking as a sort of journalistic news outlet, MediaWise is more in the education and training side of things. And they reach out to people, particularly like older people or teenagers. in trying to teach better practices in terms of social media use. So I'm going to use some of the lessons that they came up with. So we distinguish between disinformation and misinformation. Disinformation is the sharing of false or misleading material on purpose. So, a government like, say, Russia may have efforts to, like using bots online or whatever, to spread, information intentionally that is wrong or, partially incorrect. Misinformation doesn't have that on purpose part. It's the sharing of fake or misleading information, sort of, accidentally or without knowing it. And that's the distinguish we think is important, because we often can't tell if somebody's mental state in sharing something is that they're doing it on purpose or not. So we tend to use the word misinformation more than we do disinformation. But sometimes the term the term disinformation is useful to use. So a survey that our friends at MediaWise did found that more than 55% of those who are 50 years and older say that they see misinformation every day, but only 5% are actually totally confident that they can ID, they can figure out if something is actually misinformation. So they know it's out there, but they don't feel that comfortable in terms of their own skills in terms of navigating the web and social media. Why do people share these sorts of misinformation posts? Some people are doing it out of a spirit of they want to help, and they think that this is right. Some people have a strong emotional reaction and want to send stuff to their friends and family because they feel so moved by it. There's also a pressure to comment on breaking news. If everybody's talking about it, you sort of feel the peer pressure to say something yourself. They also may share it because of confirmation bias. If you don't know what that term means, it's basically you see something in social media that confirms what you already believe, even if that's incorrect, and you share it in order to get people to agree with you and sort of bring them into the club of people who think like you. Sometimes they do it out of fear or health concerns. Especially during the COVID period, people were, understandably worried about COVID and the spread. And so they would be more likely to share information because it's on top of everybody's mind. It's a scary topic. And people's guard down may have been, people may have had their guard down because they are worried and they may have shared information that is actually inaccurate. Sometimes people share to make money, scams, and there's a financial incentive. They could do it to influence your vote. People may be sharing purposely because they're so supportive of a particular candidate that they are trying to use every tool available to convince other people to their side. And some just like to do it because of clout, because people are seeing them, on the internet, maybe even going viral, and they feel important personally for that reason. So the way that social media is structured, as I'm sure you know, is that these algorithms determine what you see. They pick up what you've interacted with, what you've read, what you've liked, what you've commented on. And they recommend content that's similar because the social media platforms want to keep you engaged as much as possible. So they're not going to feed you information or topics that you don't care about because you're not going to interact with them. They use your past experience in using that platform to predict what kinds of things you'll like. What this means is that particularly if these are, if it's not a case of cat videos, which are fairly neutral politically, but if this tends to be on one, political side of the ideological spectrum, it means that most of what you're going to see in your feed is going to come from one particular political direction. And that means that there are these echo chambers, and you only hear claims that support the view that you've already sort of committed to, and you never hear the other side of things. And it can be very dangerous, obviously, because it means that people are kind of in their own separate worlds, and they never get to sort of interact and hear what the other side has to say. The path of disinformation. So here's one that came up, what was this, 2023. And I remember this one. It came across our desk when we were one day when it happened. There were reports of a large explosion near the Pentagon, which is where the military is based in DC, or just outside DC. And this photograph of this big black smoke near a building that looks like the Pentagon. It actually doesn't look that much like the Pentagon to me, but some people thought it looked like the Pentagon. So it was shared. So I'll start by saying it is not true. There was no explosion. It had the veneer, the surface of being a credible news item because it was posted by something called Bloomberg Feed. Now, Bloomberg News is a very respected, wire service in the U.S. And even the logo in this case, in the avatar spot, looks very much like what the Bloomberg logo looks like. But this is actually a fake account. It's using the Bloomberg name without being part of Bloomberg. It's just a completely fake account. And even this came on Twitter, and you'll see the little check mark, the blue check mark, which you can get just by paying like $10 a month or whatever it is. So it's not actually anything verified as being part of Bloomberg. But if you look at it quickly and you don't look any further, it seems like it's a Bloomberg News thing, and it's a big photograph. It turns out that it's actually an AI image. It wasn't anything real. It was then amplified by disinformation people. A couple of Russian channels on social media spread this as a breaking news explosion at the Pentagon right now. And that was not true. And sometimes there are real world consequences. The local fire department right near the Pentagon said that it's aware of the report circulating. It had to put out this tweet saying that there is no explosion. No one should be concerned about this. They had to take time out of their day to do this. The spoof circulated on social media at 9:45 or something, and it actually hit the stock market, and the main stock market metric fell to its lowest point all day until it became clear that it was not real. So it does have real world consequences. So there are other more worrisome trends. Deep fakes, you've probably heard of. These are synthetic videos generated with artificial intelligence. They use existing images or videos and audio of the subject to basically create a false video. It seems like it's a real video of somebody talking, saying perhaps crazy or controversial things, but it's not real. It never happened. It can be used for entertainment, for fun, but it's growing in use in terms of political disinformation. Now, I will say that we have not hit a sort of critical level in the political discourse. We see, virtually every kind of dubious claim in social media and in the regular media, and very little of it is true deep fakes. in part because the AI tools are not yet where they really need to be to convince people, technically. But this is a real fear for the future, that as the technology gets better, it'll be harder for us to distinguish between what's real and what's fake. One of the areas I think Politifact is going to have to go towards in the coming years is to have, instead of only reporters, journalists who are trained, actually have, real sort of computer scientist types who have the technical expertise to tell in the deep coding of these posts whether they are real or fake. And that's something that like a regular journalist, it's not in our skill set. So that's something I think you'll probably start seeing over the next few years, a sort of transition in that direction. However, there are cheap fakes, which are things that are slightly edited, maybe photoshopped. They're actually a bigger threat right now than the deep fakes are, because they're very easy to make. They may take a bit of real video or real photograph, but give the wrong information about when that photograph was taken and what it means and what it shows, and the time and place. Or it can be edited to make it look a little different than it was actually in real life. For instance, you guys have probably seen this one of the Pope wearing a puffy jacket. Our friends at MediaWise have found that at the time this came out, and I forget when this was, it was probably about a year ago, the survey data that they found, 47.5% thought it was real at first, before it became a big deal and everybody debunked it. Less than half of that thought it was fake. About one fifth of people thought that it wasn't, weren't sure. They just didn't know. That was a pretty good, if you look at it quickly, that photograph, fake photograph, it's got the like look of plausibility, like, it really looks like the Pope, and it really looks like a jacket, but it was not true. Here, let's skip ahead to the AI tips to look at that photograph more closely. So if you zoom in and look at some of the details, there are things that the current generation, at least, and this could change in the future, but the current generation of AI is not very good at. For instance, if you look at the lower right, you see the Pope's glasses, which kind of stop in the middle. It's not like a real circular type thing. So that's one key. It's not great at rendering a lot of these close details. The jacket doesn't look right. It doesn't have kind of aligned seams for the sewing, and his hand looks weird as he's holding whatever that is, a cup or something. So if you take the time, and that's the key, people are scrolling through their feeds and not taking the time to really try to enlarge the picture, and if the picture is good enough, it can definitely pass a very quick smell test. Some things to look for, excuse me, as you look at your social media feeds, things to be cautious. Be cautious of very emotional statements that trigger fear, surprise, anger. People are trying to, emotionally manipulate you. So they're going to use those sorts of tools. Just, it's a red flag. Accounts you haven't heard of that are anonymous, and things that are playing off breaking news. Often people will try to sort of piggyback on news that's already viral by giving their own spin, even if it's inaccurate. Here's a good example. So this is one that crossed our desk. It supposedly showed a field of electric cars all abandoned because, quote, it was too expensive to replace their batteries. And the point being that the person who created this post was saying we shouldn't shift to electric vehicles because as soon as the battery runs out, you get this huge field of cars that just can't be used. It's terrible technology. Shouldn't trust it. So in reality, this photograph is fake. So you start with the image, and you can do a reverse image search. I'll show you that. So Google Images is a great one. There are a few others. TinEye is another one, TinEye, where you can basically drag the image into the Google interface, and it can show you when that image has appeared in other places on the internet. And in this case, our researchers on staff found that it had been a photo from China. So in the post, it said this is France. So first of all, it is mislabeled. And this is not a case of even any photoshopping or anything. It's not a deep fake. It's a cheap fake. All it took was just misrepresenting what it was in the captions. So in this case, you start with the image. You do the reverse image search. You find out where it was from. Turns out it's a photo from China showing a ride-share firm that went out of business. So these cars are all there because it was a huge fleet of a ride-share firm like Uber or Bolt that went out of business. And so that's why all the cars are there. It had nothing to do with being electric. I'm not even sure that they were electric cars. It's certainly not clear that that's the case. So anyway, totally undercuts the point of the post, but with really not that much time on the part of the user, it can be pretty easily debunked. Some things that can help you as you stumble across things is you can look in two different directions, vertical and horizontal. So vertical means you look more deeply into the post and the website that it links into. So instead of just seeing the post in your feed and just sort of trusting it, you can click on the account of that social media platform. So see, is this a legitimate news organization? Is this some random guy with random digits in his handle with just a few followers, just sort of spouting stuff? Is there a link to it? Sometimes the article is real and legitimate, but it's being portrayed in a different way. So sometimes what the social media post says is actually completely at odds with what the news article that is linking to says. So you wouldn't know that unless you read the original article. So going deeper into the sourcing of that particular post is important. Look for real people, authors. Most real journalists on the internet are going to have some sort of bio somewhere at a legitimate news outlet. If there's no author listed at all, you might want to be a little bit skeptical. See if their news outlet has a corrections policy, editorial guidelines. See it. Try. Have you ever heard of them? Is it Reuters? Is it Associated Press? Or is it some random thing you've never heard of? Again, doesn't necessarily mean that they're fake or false, but the more data points you get in terms of trying to verify where something came from, the more confident that you can feel. So I dealt with that. So here's an example of let's see. So some guy at the Junk Science account, whatever that is, said cited a New York Times article that was about central Mexico volcano spewing smoke and ash. And he's saying if you're doing anything to reduce your CO2 footprint, you've just been offset forever. With the implication being that, it's not worth cutting your carbon emissions because one single volcanic eruption has wiped out everything you've ever tried to do. So is this true? The New York Times article is real, but it had nothing to do with that point. If you read the article, it doesn't say that there's so much ash spewed out that it's going to make your progress in CO2 emissions totally worthless. So it's pointing to a real article, but it says something very different than what the Post claims. And if you do a little bit more research, you can look at government websites. As the NOAA is the U.S. government agency that deals with climate, atmospheric, weather type of topics, and they have an article that talks about specifically which emits carbon dioxide more, volcanoes or human activities. And human activities emit 60 or more times the amount of carbon dioxide released by volcanoes each year. So, that's from 2016. It's not absolutely current, but it's a pretty reliable source. And, the difference between 60 times is definitely gives you a level of comfort that what that Post is saying is not accurate. Finally, just some tools that you can do to limit the spread of misinformation for your family and your community. Talk to them, but use a sort of approach that is, respectful and empathetic. Say that you understand the appeal of what they shared, but the reality is that it's wrong, and you should do this privately so they're not embarrassed. A one-on-one discussion. Hear what they have to say. Why did they share that? Why did they think it was real? What is their backup? Was it just a case where they that they admit they got fooled and apologize for it? Don't be overly emotional about it. Just sort of be calm and reassuring about what the actual truth is. And this is something that probably won't be solved within one specific interaction. It's the kind of thing, if somebody is really deeply ingrained in these sorts of misinformation sharing on social media, you need to be open to long-term discussions and sort of come back to them periodically when they share something that is clearly wrong. So, any other questions? I'll get out of screen sharing.
Thank you so much for this enlightening presentation. Actually, as we discussed before, disinformation is I can say that it is one of our biggest issues recently. And because of lack of media literacy, we are, as you said, easily can believe what we are seeing on social media. And I'm always saying that while we are sitting here, somebody is investing something, creating something new in the technology. And therefore, I believe that in the near future, we couldn't even catch the new developed tools, especially in social media. And thank you so much for, as I said, this enlightening information about how actually we can struggle with disinformation and misinformation in our daily lives. And I would like to ask another question, actually, while you are discussing the AI created images. Yes, recently, for now, let's say, we can understand that those pictures were created by an AI tool. But OpenAI and Google, for example, created another tool for example, Sora, which they created a video, and I watched it. Actually, you couldn't even understand that it was created by an AI tool. So I would like to ask a question here: that what do you think? How we will this let's say struggle with this new developed tools, especially in AI programs, let's say.
So I've always said that journalists like me can do what we can to use our professional expertise to help guide people through the confusing universe of false or questionable claims. But we're not the whole solution. And I'm grateful that you're using the opportunity to teach your students, because I've always said that the most important factor is for education beginning in kindergarten all the way up to be better citizens on the internet and in social media. It's so important to have critical thinking skills, and just the sort of notion of slowing down and like not letting your emotions sort of lead you to believe something is true in the moment, in the instant, but rather to just take a deep breath and say, is this really true? To have that sort of alarm bell go off in your head. This sounds a little bit off, and that's something that educators really need to increasingly address in their classes at all age levels, because we can tell you, what is true and false for things that we check, but we're only checking the small percentage of everything that you might hear or see in a given day. People are spending so much time, in their feeds and various social media outlets that we can't possibly check it all. So it's really up to the individual to have the tools, like the tools that I've been teaching you in the second presentation I just gave, to really look deeper into the posts that cross their feed. And it does take time. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. Just to have the sort of desire to really want to know whether something is true or not, as opposed to just assuming it's true and scrolling on to the next thing. So does that help?
Thank you. Yes. Any other question? Who has a question? I'm giving you 10 seconds to think about any question. Yes? Do you want to ask another one? So. Yes, it seems that everything was clear, and I'm very glad for hosting you here, actually. I think it is 8 o'clock in the morning in America right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And thank you so much once more for accepting our invitation to be here with us today. And it was very informative and enlightening presentation. And I hope we will meet soon, maybe in America or maybe again.
Great. Thank you. Yes, thanks. And I look forward to seeing you wherever it may be.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't.
Oh, sorry. So,
in America, let's see.
yeah, no, I was just saying thank you. I'm glad to do it and look forward to seeing you wherever it may be.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And once again, if you have something to say for the last time to our students as last words.
I think that's it.
Yeah. I hope to see you soon then.
Okay, that sounds great.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was not a bad shot, but this is not how it all started. I've always been dreaming of becoming a filmmaker. I believe that a good movie can make our world a better place. But I need to learn more. Life is like a video game. It's fun and it's challenging at the same time. Every accomplished mission leads to another one. Look at these harmonious moves. A perfect combination of mind and body, absolute freedom of self-expression. Art imitates life, and nature is the ultimate masterpiece. To design like a master, you must learn the basics and then go beyond. But how? So our journey began to this magical place, Cyprus. We found our voices. We heard each other's songs. We captured our moment, and we painted our lives. Not to mention the fun. We illuminated our future. We learned from the past. The craft and the knowledge came together to create art. There's a lot to discover and a lot to be done. We were taken by hand, one by one. The journey goes on, and the future is bright. The seeds we planted will give years of beautiful blossoms. So our dreams came to life, and life became like a dream. The magic is real, only if you believe. The journey we began finally came to an end. But it's time for a new start. Now, let's take another shot.